Okay, just making a quick review of this book, Hell's Cartel, IG Farben, and the Making of Hitler's War Machine. I first saw his talks on YouTube, and this is this really stunning book. He has some new firsthand testimony of survivors of Auschwitz. And then I just got this book, Nazi Billionaires, The Dark History of Germany's Wealthiest Dynasties. And so I haven't started this one yet, but I need to return this one. Basically, the idea here, what makes this book so fascinating is that essentially he goes over the history of Germany developing synthetic petroleum and synthetic rubber out of their early development of inorganic chemistry as an industry, and how the industry during World War I became completely interwoven with the military regime of Germany. And the key of this was the patent laws, the German patent laws, to then control production in other countries. And so basically had this intense competition about the international patent laws. And so that then developed into World War II, where it just happened that IG Farben became essentially like the third largest corporation in the world at the time, and the second was Standard Oil. I think the first was U.S. Steel. One of those three there in the top three, those three. And so IG Farben, they realized that to secure the patents, they wanted to develop synthetic oil from coal, using coal, because Germany has lots of coal. But so they first they developed synthetic fertilizer, which was a huge success. And so then they had to get the synthetic oil funded. They got U.S. Steel to be a partner, essentially, and they developed a patent partnership with U.S. Steel. And that took a while to develop, but that gave them the funding they needed to then invest in developing the synthetic oil. And then they also sold U.S. Steel not U.S. Steel, Standard Oil on synthetic rubber, for synthetic rubber. So then the problem was that at the time, all of a sudden you had these new oil discoveries. I can't remember where, I think it was like Texas or something, but essentially the price for oil, IG Farben was no longer competitive for having synthetic, for selling synthetic oil and synthetic rubber. And then you had the Depression hit, and when the Depression hit, the international loans to Germany, because Germany had been relying on U.S. loans to rebuild their infrastructure. And of course, they were building up their military secretly. That doesn't get into the military building as much. This focuses just on IG Farben. But of course, IG Farben, they built everything from explosives to petroleum, and they controlled the whole synthetic chemical market. And so they are described as a panoply, as I mentioned before. And this book basically describes them as Hitler's cartel, because what happened then was that basically in order to, so you had this sort of a synergy between the military war machine and the Depression, where Germany, in order for Germany to build up to stay economically competitive in the global economy, IG Farben then aligned themselves with they began buying newspapers and funding the fascist regime, the Hitler, the Nazi political party. So basically, this book, what makes this book so important is it basically proves that the Nazi war machine was created as a means for IG Farben to then expand, to have a government-sponsored market for its synthetic oil and synthetic rubber for the Nazi war machine to expand. Because if they didn't have that war machine subsidy, then they wouldn't have a competitive market for what they had been planning on, because otherwise the global oil market wouldn't have needed the synthetic oil because it was too expensive to produce. So that's the basic gist of this book, is that the Hitler war machine was interwoven with IG Farben's development of synthetic oil and synthetic rubber, along with the explosives. And they created everything from the material for clothing and all that, and of course medicinal stuff, the synthetic chemicals for all sorts of medicinal treatments. And then they of course also created Zyklon B, which is the pesticide used for the mass murder for the Holocaust. And so then this book moves into how IG Farben, one of the top chemists of IG Farben, was also a friend of Himmler's. And then he was the one who chose Auschwitz to develop an IG Farben site to develop the synthetic oil and synthetic rubber. And so there was already a prison being developed in Auschwitz. And so it just so happened that it was a perfect site for IG Farben's factory as well. So that's what made Auschwitz the biggest killing machine in the Holocaust, because the idea was just to burn through the labor force as fast as possible. So they weren't even slave labor. They were just they were just expendable, just like worked as fast as possible. They would only work for like a month. They would only last for like a month because they were worked to death, and they were death camps. And so, and those are just the people. Those are just the men who were fit enough to work, and then everybody else was just immediately gassed by Zyklon B, the children and the women with children. So, and the elderly. So then, essentially, it gets into how the conditions at the IG Farben, the IG Auschwitz plant were extremely horrific. They just got, in fact, the IG Farben supervisors were more sadistic than the SS capos that oversaw the forced labor, the death camps, the death factories. So the IG Farben was actually, they were like the secret core of the profit motive, because Auschwitz was really about increasing the profit of the production of the synthetic oil and synthetic rubber, and of course extracting all the wealth from the people that were murdered as part of the Holocaust. So So then it gets into how the Allies then started bombing the concentration camps near the very end, and how they were, barely able to survive, and some people survived, but and then and then at the very end, the economic elite of IG Farben, that some of them went to prison, some of them did not, and then when they got out of jail, they took on leadership roles in the industry of Germany once again. And the Allies were basically like, we need the technical expertise of the scientists, and a lot of these since IG Farben had been interwoven with the Standard Oil, then they still had a lot of investments that they were shut down after the war started, but they still maintain those. Basically, the idea of the Allies was, well, we're gonna there's gonna still be a demand for all the chemicals from synthetic inorganic carbon chemistry. So basically, that's how it just continued after the war, and that's what leads you into the second book on the Nazi billionaires, because the wealth. What drove the war initially was this economic profit motive that aligned with the state as like a military corporate machine.